fire trucks. Those are the vehicles commonly used by our heroes without capes. They respond to all kinds of emergencies, whether that's a fire, floods, or even cats stuck on trees. That's why they come in different types, each designed for specific roles in firefighting. To give you an idea, just in the US alone, there's the ladder truck, the pumper truck, the tanker, the heavy rescue, and combining all these utilities, the quint. Since these trucks save lives every day and have become a source of fascination for kids, it's only natural that LEGO would introduce them into their lineup. In fact, since the debut way back in 1964, LEGO has actually released more than 100 sets featuring fire trucks, leading up to the latest release in 2024. But among all these different sets, there's one thing that always bugged me: the lack of realism. Take this model for example. It appears to replicate a tiller truck, another type of American fire engine, but it has notable flaws. The ladder is mounted at the rear instead of the middle, and the separate rear cabin for steering is missing. The blue beacon lights also feel out of place, since these trucks are not used in Europe. Sure, I'm aware that these sets are targeted mainly at kids, and that's completely fine. But in this video, we are going to build an actual realistic ladder truck. For that, I've divided the building process into 5 steps. Let's start with the chassis. As always, laying some groundwork is crucial for overall structural integrity, but you also shouldn't forget to leave gaps for essential components like the wheels. The whole build will later be about 9 studs in width and 46 studs in length. That's roughly 3 inches wide and 14.5 inches long, or 7.5 centimeters wide and 37 centimeters long. Since that's quite large for a LEGO fire truck, we need to build not just one, but 2 axles in the back and a separate one in the front. For that, I'm using jumper plates to attach the axles, so that the wheels don't stick out too far from the chassis. Let's attach them. Let's continue with the cabin now. This step is pretty important, as the cabin usually makes American fire trucks easily recognizable, and we want to make sure to imitate that with LEGO bricks. Alright, I'm already putting down some attachment points for the front here that we will attach later on, but now we are running into a bit of a problem. I think that the normal LEGO steering wheel is too small for a truck, which is why I'm building this custom one that is angled slightly downward. However, the setup takes up more space in the interior, which is why the minifigure doesn't fit into the seat anymore. To counteract that, we can once again use jumper plates to set the interior back by half a stud. That's it! Now the minifigure has enough space for its feet again. Back to building. Since LEGO doesn't really offer an 8 stud wide windshield, I'm combining 2 smaller 4 wide screens here to make up for that. By doing so, we can even recreate the divider in the middle of the windscreen, which you can often see on real American fire trucks as well. Now all that's left is the actual front of the truck. To keep things simple, we are using a plate as a base. The distinctive bumper is then built on top using rounded bricks. As a last step, I'm putting down a siren and hose connection points onto the bumper to add more detail. That's done, so let's connect the front to the main model. Let's have a look at the next step, the storage and midsection. We have to start by building connection points for tools and equipment like helmets, extinguishers and oxygen masks that are going to be added later on. Once that's done, it's time for the back fenders. But here I'm once again running into a small issue. Using arch pieces for the back fenders would create a huge distance between the 2 wheels. To shrink that distance, I want to use this construct with cheese slopes. But since the slopes are upside down, I have to use these stud reversal pieces that allow me to connect bricks on opposite sides. Once the fenders are built, we can connect them to the storage compartment. Now, before we can continue with the next crucial part of the truck, we first have to finish these connection points in the back and fill a few gaps in the build. Once that's done, it's time for the outriggers. Since fire trucks need to reach heights of up to 100 feet, they have to use outriggers to stabilize the vehicle. Without them, the raised center of gravity from the extended ladder could cause a tip over, just like it happened here. Then let's see with what kind of mechanism we came up with to replicate the outriggers in LEGO. It's hard to make up how it works from the outside, so let's look a little closer. These two pieces attach to one another, but the amount of friction is just right to avoid the outriggers from sliding out while still being easy enough to pull out by hand. Here's how that looks like. After that, they also extend vertically. And to lock the position, we can turn around these pins. Good, let's attach the outriggers in the front before we can move on to building more storage space above the fenders. Here, we're adding 6 small compartments with doors to store gear like a megaphone, helmets, traffic cones and a med kit. Now that we've attached that, we can build a doors and opening mechanism for the storage in the back. It's really just a simple mechanism with pins, but it works well in this case. Attach, and the same for the front storage, even though it's quite a bit larger. Once it's all in place, the door can open up to 90 degrees to access the equipment stored inside. All that's missing after we connect these doors is the actual equipment inside that we need to add. Now we can move on to the next step. The rear. Just like before, I'm using lots of pink bricks here since those will not be visible later anyway. That way it's easier for anyone building the model to swap them out for whatever color they have on hand or can get for the lowest price. Like the front, the rear section is built fairly simple with these two 4x4 plates that act as a base. We then add the details, which include the bumper, the headlights and these additional beacon lights at the top. Now that we've used these two models together, we can add the whole rear to the main model. I'm using the same outriggers we already placed in the front for the back as well, and after we close these final gaps, the rear section is done. This last step might just be the most important one. After all, the ladder is what truly defines a ladder truck. But before we can build that, we first need to put together this roof that the ladder will eventually sit on. To build it, I'm using a bunch of flat tiles and this elevated construct that will later secure the ladder in place. I'm also adding a few small lights, so the minifigures can see what they're doing, even at night. Let's attach the roof and continue with the one in the front, where I first have to make some minor changes. Alright, the main problem with this roof is that I have to build around the minifigures' heads if I still want them to be able to sit inside comfortably. That means less stability overall, but it just looks better. We also can't forget about the light bars on top and this rim, which is supposed to look like a fan. Great, now we can finally begin to build the ladder. Starting with the base of the turntable, we can already attach this crucial part for the tilt mechanism. It not only resembles the hydraulic system real firetrucks use, but also adds friction to hold the tilted ladder in place. Moving on, you just saw me putting down the small console for controlling the ladder, and now I'm adding these railings for safety. The actual ladder consists of 2 Lego firetruck ladders that I'm connecting to each other and 3 more separate ladders I'm adding to the front, which make the ladder extendable. To further hide the connection point, I'm installing these side panels as well. The last thing we need to build is the basket at the tip of the ladder. Since the basket has to stay level with the ground, it isn't fixed directly to the ladder, but instead moves independently through this bar that allows it to tilt. As a last step, I'm also adding some final details, which include these hose nozzles as well as emergency and floodlights. With that done, it's time to attach everything and finish putting the build together. This is the finished model. Although we're finished with the building process, we're actually not quite done yet. So let's add some stickers. Because I didn't base the fire truck on any department in particular, I kept the theming generic and similar to Lego City fire trucks. For American friends out there, we also made a Chicago Fire Department version and added stickers to complement the new color scheme. Here's how the truck would look like in deployment. case you want to build this model for yourself, you can download the instructions as PDFs in the description below. As always, you can get them for free, so I'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching! If you want to see how I built the most iconic police car in LEGO, click and watch this next video.